There are moments in life that split your world in two, the before and the after. For me, it wasn't the day I found out. It wasn't even the day I confronted them. It was the day I decided they wouldn't get away with it. The day I realized that the perfect wedding toast would be my perfect revenge. I still remember how my hands trembled as I picked up my phone that night, scrolling through their messages with numb fingers. The screen's harsh glow illuminated my tear-streaked face in my darkened bedroom, while the truth I'd been blind to for months unfolded before my eyes. My fiancé, James, and my best friend since childhood, Vanessa, the two people I trusted most in the world. I should start at the beginning. My name is Emma Clark, and 6 months ago I was planning my dream wedding to the man I thought was the love of my life. James and I had been together for 4 years, college sweethearts who'd survived the post-graduation transition and built what I believed was an unshakable foundation. He proposed on our anniversary with my grandmother's restored vintage ring. I cried. He cried. It was perfect. And who was the first person I called, screaming with excitement? Vanessa Martin. My best friend since we were 7 years old, sharing juice boxes and secrets on the playground. The girl who held my hair back after my first heartbreak in 10th grade, who road-tripped with me to college, who stood by me through every major life event. My ride or die, my sister from another mother, my maid of honor. "Oh my God, Em!" "Let me see it." She'd squealed when I FaceTimed her moments after James had slipped the ring on my finger. Her beautiful face filled my phone screen, her signature glossy dark hair framing those wide, expressive eyes that always seemed to sparkle with mischief. "It's gorgeous." "I'm so happy for you." Was she, though? Was she happy for me as she helped me choose wedding venues, as she accompanied me to dress fittings, as she organized my bridal shower? Was she happy for me when she was sleeping with my fiancé behind my back? I never suspected a thing. That's what haunts me most. Not one single solitary thing. James had always been friendly with Vanessa. They had to be, with her being such a huge part of my life. The three of us often spent time together, and I actually felt blessed that my best friend and my future husband got along so well. They could hold conversations when I left the room. They shared inside jokes. They had each other's phone numbers and occasionally texted about surprise parties for me or gift ideas. How convenient. It was a Tuesday night when my world collapsed. James was working late, again, at his architecture firm. Another big project, another important deadline. I'd grown used to his absences over the past few months, trying to be the supportive fiancé despite missing him terribly. We were only 4 months away from our wedding, and while most of the major planning was done, there were still countless details to finalize. I'd called Vanessa earlier that evening, but she hadn't picked up. "Probably on a date," I murmured to myself, smiling slightly. Vanessa's love life was always chaotic, a string of almost relationships and dramatic breakups. She claimed she hadn't found her James. Yet. The irony makes me sick now. Bored and restless in our empty apartment, I decided to use James's laptop to browse some honeymoon destinations. His computer was on the coffee table and I knew his password. We'd never been the type to hide things from each other. Or so I thought. I hadn't meant to open his messages. I really hadn't. But when I opened the browser, his Facebook was already logged in, and a message notification popped up from Vanessa. "I miss you already. Last night was incredible." My heart stuttered. My fingertips went cold. Time seemed to freeze as I stared at those words, trying to make them mean something. Anything, other than what they obviously meant. With a shaking hand, I clicked on the message thread. And there it was. Months of conversations, flirtatious at first, then explicit. Plans to meet. Hotel room confirmations, photos I will never be able to unsee. My best friend and my fiancé carrying on an affair while helping me plan my wedding. "We need to tell her soon," James had written just 3 days earlier. "After the Henderson project is done," Vanessa had replied. "You need to be focused for that. We'll figure out the right time. I love you. I love you too. More than I ever thought possible." I don't remember screaming, but I must have, because my throat was raw afterward. I don't remember smashing the ceramic vase on our side table, but I cut my foot on the shards later. What I do remember is the ice-cold clarity that washed over me once the initial shock began to subside. They were going to tell me. They had it all planned out. They would sit me down, explain that they'd never meant to hurt me, that their love was unexpected but real, and then they'd ride off into the sunset together, perhaps feeling a little guilty but ultimately justified in their betrayal because they'd found true love. How fucking romantic. I scrolled back through the messages, forcing myself to read every word, to understand the full extent of their deception. It had been going on for 7 months. 7 months of lies, of looking me in the eye and pretending, of Vanessa helping me choose a wedding dress while sleeping with the groom, of James kissing me goodbye while heading out to meet her. The timestamps told their own story, messages sent during my bridal shower. During the weekend, James claimed to be at a conference in Chicago. During the night, Vanessa said she had food poisoning and couldn't meet me for our monthly dinner date. As I sat there, numb and trembling, James's phone call came through on his laptop. The devices were synced. I declined it, not ready to hear his voice. He called again, and again. Then a text. "Hey babe, just checking in. You're not answering your phone. Everything okay? Everything okay?" Was he serious? I wanted to laugh and scream simultaneously. Instead, I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, my mind racing. What now? Confront them? Scream? Cry? Burn all his belongings in the front yard? My phone pinged with a text from Vanessa. "Hey Em, just saw James called you a bunch. He's worried because you're not picking up. Everything all right?" The casual concern, the seamless coordination between them, hit me like a physical blow. They were checking on me together. They were already a unit, a team against me. I turned off my phone and sat in the silence of my apartment. 3 hours later, I heard his key in the lock. I hadn't moved, hadn't cleaned up the broken vase, hadn't wiped the tears that had dried on my face. "Emma? Jesus, what happened?" James rushed to me, his handsome face a mask of concern as he surveyed the scene. The broken vase, my vacant expression, the darkness of the apartment. "I've been calling you for hours. Are you hurt?" He reached for me, and I recoiled as if his touch would burn me. In the dim light from the hallway, I saw confusion flash across his face. "Emma, you're scaring me." "What's going on?" I looked at him, really looked at him. The man I'd planned to spend my life with. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, his blue eyes wide with what appeared to be genuine concern. He was still wearing his work clothes, a light blue button-down and navy slacks. How many times had Vanessa unbuttoned that shirt? How long? My voice was barely a whisper. "What? How long what?" But there was a flicker in his eyes, a momentary panic that told me he knew exactly what I was asking. "How long have you been fucking my best friend?" The color drained from his face. He took a step back, his mouth opening and closing wordlessly. And in that moment of shocked silence, I had my answer. It was all true. "Emma, He started, then stopped, swallowing hard. "How did you—" "Your messages were open on your laptop," I said flatly. "I saw everything." He closed his eyes briefly, his shoulders sagging. When he looked at me again, his expression had changed. The panic was gone, replaced by something else. Resignation mixed with— Was that relief? "We were going to tell you," he said quietly. "After my project wrapped up. We never meant for this to happen, Emma. You have to believe that." A laugh escaped me, a harsh, broken sound that startled us both. "I don't have to believe anything you say ever again, James." "Please, let me explain." "Explain what?" My voice rose as the numbness began to give way to white-hot anger. "Explain how you've been cheating on me with my best friend for over half a year. Explain how you both looked me in the eye day after day and lied. Explain how you let me plan our wedding while you were planning a future with her." He flinched at each question but didn't deny anything. Instead, he sank down onto the couch across from me, putting his head in his hands. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said, his voice muffled. "Neither of us did. It just happened. Things like this don't just happen, James." I spat. "You made choices. Both of you. Every secret text, every lie about working late, every time you touched her, those were choices." He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "I know. You're right. But Emma, the feelings are real. I love her." Those words hit me like a physical blow. I love her. Not I loved you. Not I'm sorry. I love her. "Get out," I whispered. "Emma, get out!" I screamed, finally breaking. I grabbed the nearest object, a framed photo of us from a vacation last year, and hurled it at the wall near his head. The glass shattered, raining down on the hardwood floor. "Get your things and get out of my apartment." He stood quickly, hands raised as if surrendering. Okay. I'll go to a hotel tonight. We can talk tomorrow when you've calmed down." "When I've calmed down?" I laughed again, that same broken sound. "There won't be a conversation tomorrow, James. There won't be a wedding. There won't be an us. It's over." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I'll get some things." I watched in silence as he went to our bedroom, the room we'd shared for 3 years, and emerged 10 minutes later with a hastily packed duffel bag. He paused at the door, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't decipher. "For what it's worth, I am sorry," he said softly. "I never wanted to hurt you." "But you did," I replied, my voice flat. "Now go to her. I'm sure she's waiting." After he left, the silence in the apartment was deafening. I sat motionless, staring at nothing, feeling everything and nothing all at once. My phone kept buzzing. James, probably. Or Vanessa. I ignored it. Eventually, I dragged myself to the bathroom and stared at my reflection in the mirror. Puffy eyes, tear-stained cheeks, hair a disheveled mess. Who was this broken woman looking back at me? Not the confident Emma Clark who'd been planning her dream wedding. Not the woman who'd thought she had it all figured out. I stripped off my clothes and stepped into the shower, turning the water as hot as I could stand it. As the steam filled the bathroom, I finally let myself break down completely, sliding down the tile wall to sit on the shower floor as sobs racked my body. I cried until the water ran cold, until my skin was pruned and my eyes burned. When I finally emerged, wrapped in a towel, I felt hollowed out, empty. I crawled into bed, our bed, and pulled the covers over my head, trying to block out the reality of what my life had become. Morning came with no mercy. Sunlight streamed through the blinds I'd forgotten to close, and for one blissful moment before full consciousness hit, everything was normal. Then the memories flooded back, and the pain returned with crushing force. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 29 text messages, 8 from James, the rest from Vanessa. "Emma, please call me. We need to talk. I know James told you. Please let me explain. I'm so sorry. This isn't how we wanted you to find out. Emma, I'm worried about you. Please just let me know you're okay." The audacity, the absolute audacity of her concern. As if she had any right to worry about me after what she'd done. I deleted all her messages without reading the rest and blocked her number. Then I did the same with James. The small act of digital severance gave me a tiny semblance of control in a situation where I had none. I called in sick to work, my first sick day in over a year. My boss, Linda, didn't question it, perhaps hearing the rawness in my voice. "Take care of yourself, Emma," she said kindly. If only she knew. The day passed in a blur. I alternated between crying jags and periods of numb silence, staring at the walls of our apartment. My apartment now, I supposed. Everything in it reminded me of James, of the life we'd built, of the future we'd planned. The coffee table we'd argued over at IKEA, the throw pillows I'd insisted on and he'd teased me about, the framed art we'd collected from local artists. By evening, I couldn't bear to look at any of it anymore. I grabbed my keys and left, driving aimlessly through the city with no destination in mind. Eventually, I found myself parked outside my parents' house in the suburbs, though I hadn't consciously decided to go there. My mother opened the door before I even knocked, as if she'd sensed my arrival. One look at my face told her everything she needed to know. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, pulling me into her arms. I collapsed against her, fresh tears coming as she led me inside. My father appeared in the hallway, his expression changing from welcome to concern as he took in my state. "What happened?" he asked, his voice gentle but with an undercurrent of the protectiveness that had always made me feel safe as a child. Between sobs, I told them everything. The messages, the affair, the betrayal by the two people I trusted most. My mother held me while my father paced, his jaw clenched in the way it always was when he was angry but trying not to show it. "You'll stay here tonight," my mother said when I'd finished, wiping my tears with her thumbs the way she used to when I was little. "You shouldn't be alone." I nodded, too exhausted to argue. She made up my old bedroom while my father made hot chocolate, his solution to every crisis since I was a child. The familiar routine was comforting, a remnant of a time when my parents could fix any problem, kiss any wound better. "I want to kill him," my father said quietly as we sat at the kitchen table, steam rising from our mugs. "Both of them." "Robert?" my mother warned. "Well, I do," he insisted, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "But what I want more is for you to be okay, Emma. And you will be. Not today, probably not tomorrow, but eventually." I nodded, though I didn't believe him. How could I ever be okay again? How could I ever trust anyone again? "The wedding," I said suddenly, the practical implications hitting me for the first time. "We have to cancel everything. The venue, the caterer, the flowers. We'll handle it," my mother assured me. "Don't worry about any of that now. People will ask questions. I continued, my mind racing ahead to the awkward conversations, the pitying looks. Everyone will know that you were strong enough to walk away from someone who didn't deserve you. My father finished firmly. That's what they'll know. That night, in my childhood bedroom surrounded by relics of a simpler time, debate team trophies, faded posters, stuffed animals I hadn't been able to part with, I stared at the ceiling and tried to make sense of my new reality. The wedding was off. My fiancé was gone. My best friend was, what? My enemy? The word seemed melodramatic yet accurate. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won out. Emma, it's Vanessa. I'm using my work phone since you blocked my personal one. Please, we need to talk. What happened was inexcusable, but you deserve an explanation. James is devastated. We both are. Please call me. Devastated? They were devastated? A fresh wave of anger washed over me, so intense it left me shaking. The audacity of them to claim devastation when they were together, when they had each other, when they had orchestrated this whole betrayal. I almost hurled my phone across the room but stopped myself. Instead, I took a screenshot of the message and saved it. Something in me, some small, cold voice, whispered that I might need evidence of their communications later. For what, I wasn't sure yet. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a determination I hadn't felt the day before. I needed to go back to my apartment and face the wreckage of my life. I needed to start picking up the pieces, however shattered they might be. My mother tried to convince me to stay another day, but I insisted. I can't hide here forever, Mom. I need to, start dealing with this. She sent me home with enough homemade food to last a week and made me promise to call that evening. My father hugged me longer than usual at the door, whispering, "You're stronger than you know, Emmy." The apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Broken glass still on the floor, the place eerily silent. For a moment I regretted coming back, but then I straightened my shoulders and got to work. I cleaned up the glass, vacuumed the entire apartment, and opened all the windows to let in fresh air. Physical activity kept my mind occupied, gave me something to focus on besides the gaping hole in my chest. As I was changing the sheets on the bed, I couldn't bear to sleep on the same ones he'd slept on. My phone rang. Unknown number again. I ignored it. A voicemail notification appeared moments later. Against my better judgment, I listened. "Emma, it's James. I'm at Jake's place." God, I don't even know what to say. I know sorry doesn't begin to cover it. What we did, was unforgivable. But please, can we just talk? In person? You deserve that much. Call me back on this number if you're willing. His voice cracked at the end, and for a brief, weak moment my heart ached for him. Then I remembered the messages, the lies, the betrayal, and the ache hardened into something else. Resolve. I didn't call him back. Instead, I called Linda and told her I'd be back at work tomorrow. I called the wedding venue and canceled our reservation, absorbing the news that we'd lose our deposit with numb acceptance. I called my cousin Ashley, who I'd been close with since childhood, and gave her a condensed version of what had happened. "That absolute bastard," she hissed. "And Vanessa? You're Vanessa? I can't believe it." "Neither could I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. "What can I do?" Ashley asked, and I loved her for not offering platitudes, for immediately focusing on action. "Help me tell people the wedding's off?" I asked, the thought of making those calls myself suddenly overwhelming. Not the details, just that it's not happening. "Consider it done," she promised. "And Emma? You can stay with me if you don't want to be in that apartment. Ben won't mind." Ben was her husband of 3 years, a gentle giant of a man who treated Ashley like she hung the moon. "Thanks, but I think I need to be here right now. Face it head on, you know." After we hung up, I sat on the freshly made bed and contemplated my next steps. I needed to return to some semblance of normalcy, go back to work, eat regular meals, exercise, basic human functions to keep myself going while my heart healed, if it ever would. But beneath the practical considerations, another thought was taking shape, nebulous at first, then increasingly clear. They had humiliated me. They had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And they thought they could just move on with their lives together, their happiness built on the ruins of mine. Something cold settled in my chest as I considered this. A question formed. Did I want to just survive this, or did I want justice? Revenge, even? The old Emma, the one who existed before Tuesday night, would have been shocked at such thoughts. That Emma believed in taking the high road, in dignity through silence, in the karma of living well as the best revenge. but that Emma was gone, destroyed by betrayal and lies. This new Emma, emerging from the ashes of that destruction, wasn't so sure about the high road anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. "Just called your Aunt Meredith and Uncle Steve. They send their love. Who's next on the list?" I sent her a few more names, then set my phone aside and walked to the window. The city sprawled before me, carrying on as if nothing had changed, as if my world hadn't just imploded. Somewhere out there, James and Vanessa were together, probably comforting each other over the awkwardness of the situation, making plans for their future together. My hands curled into fists at the thought. They didn't get to ride off into the sunset after what they'd done. They didn't get to have a happily ever after that was supposed to be mine. For the first time since discovering their betrayal, I felt something other than despair. A cold, clarifying anger that focused my mind and steadied my shaking hands. They thought they knew me. Sweet, forgiving Emma who always took the high road. They were counting on that version of me to eventually give them her blessing, to validate their true love narrative. They were about to discover just how wrong they were. The next day, I returned to work at the marketing firm where I'd been for the past 3 years. I'd applied foundation liberally to hide the dark circles under my eyes and dressed in one of my most confidence-boosting outfits, a tailored navy pantsuit that always made me feel powerful. The sympathetic glances from coworkers told me Ashley had been efficient in spreading the news. Linda called me into her office mid-morning. "Emma, I'm so sorry about what happened," she said, her normally brisk tone softened with concern. "If you need more time, I need to work," I interrupted gently. "I need normalcy and distraction." "But thank you." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Well, the Anderson campaign could certainly use your attention, if you're sure." I threw myself into work with a focus that surprised even me. The complex strategy needed for the Anderson campaign, a regional healthcare provider looking to rebrand, provided exactly the kind of mental challenge I needed. Hours slipped by as I researched competing brands, drafted messaging hierarchies, and outlined a digital strategy. By the time I looked up, most of my colleagues had left for the day. The office was quiet, the overhead lights dimmed to the evening setting. My phone showed 3 missed calls, 1 from my mother and 2 from unknown numbers. I called my mother back immediately. "Just checking in," she said, trying and failing to sound casual. "How was work?" "Good," I replied, surprised to find I meant it. "Busy. Distracting in the best way. Have you eaten? Your father and I could bring dinner." "I'm fine, Mom. I promise. I'm going to pick up some groceries on the way home." She hesitated, then said, "Vanessa came by the house today. My blood ran cold." "What?" "She was looking for you. Said she'd been to your apartment multiple times and you weren't answering the door." "What did you tell her?" I asked, my voice tight. "Your father told her to leave and not come back," my mother said simply. "He was not gentle about it. Despite everything, that made me smile slightly. My father, always my protector. She left a letter for you." My mother continued reluctantly. "I didn't want to mention it, but burn it," I said immediately. "Emma, please, Mom. I don't want to hear anything she has to say right now." My mother sighed but didn't push. "All right, sweetheart. Call if you need anything." After hanging up, I sat in my darkened office for a long moment, processing this new information. Vanessa had gone to my parents' house. She'd been to my apartment multiple times. She was trying desperately to reach me. Good. Let her try. Let her feel a fraction of the desperation I'd felt. I packed up my things and headed to the grocery store as planned. As I pushed my cart down the aisles, selecting ingredients for simple meals to get me through the week, I felt a strange sense of disconnection, as if I was watching myself perform these mundane tasks from a distance. At the wine aisle, I hesitated, then added 3 bottles to my cart. If ever there was a time for wine, it was now. Back at my apartment, I put away the groceries and poured myself a generous glass of Cabernet before settling on the couch with my laptop. Without quite admitting to myself what I was doing, I opened Facebook and navigated to Vanessa's profile. Her profile picture was still the same, a candid shot I'd taken of her laughing at a rooftop bar last summer, her face lit by golden hour sunlight. Her cover photo was from our trip to the coast 2 years ago, both of us with wind-blown hair, arms around each other, ocean waves crashing behind us. "Best friends forever," the caption read. The irony made me take a large gulp of wine. I scrolled through her recent posts, mostly work-related, a few shares of political articles, nothing personal, nothing about James. They were being discreet then, or at least trying to be. Next, I checked James's profile. He hadn't posted in weeks. He'd never been as active on social media as Vanessa or me. His last post was a link to an architectural journal article from before our engagement. Unlike Vanessa, he hadn't blocked me. Either he forgot or he was leaving that door open intentionally. I closed Facebook and opened my email instead. There, in my work inbox, was a message from Vanessa sent an hour ago. Subject, please read this. Emma, I know you've blocked my number and want nothing to do with me right now. I don't blame you. What we did, was inexcusable. There's no justification that will make this okay. But I need you to know how sorry I am. Not just for the affair, but for how you found out. You deserved better than finding those messages. You deserved honesty from both of us. I never meant to fall in love with James. It happened slowly, and we both fought against it because of you. We never wanted to hurt you, Emma. You have to believe that. I've lost my best friend, and that pain is almost unbearable. I miss you. I miss us. I know I have no right to ask for your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to talk. Just once. After that, if you never want to see me again, I'll respect that. Please, Emma. 15 years of friendship has to count for something, even now. Vanessa. I read the email twice, my hand shaking so badly that wine sloshed over the rim of my glass onto my shirt. The audacity. The absolute gall. We never wanted to hurt you. As if affair had just happened to them, like catching a cold or getting caught in the rain. Something unfortunate but unavoidable. And that line, 15 years of friendship has to count for something. As if she hadn't been the one to throw those 15 years away for a man. My man. I closed the email without responding and set my laptop aside, my mind racing. They were trying so hard to reach me, both of them. Why? To ease their guilt? To get my blessing? So they could move forward without the stain of their betrayal? Whatever their reasons, I wasn't ready to give them what they wanted. Not yet. Not until I figured out what I wanted. The next few days fell into a pattern. Work, home, minimal social contact, avoiding places where I might run into either of them. I changed my routine, shopping at a different grocery store, taking a different route to work, even finding a new coffee shop to replace the one James and I had frequented. My parents called daily. Ashley checked in regularly. A few other friends reached out with invitations for drinks or dinner, which I mostly declined. I wasn't ready to answer the inevitable questions, to see the pity in their eyes. The attempts at contact from James and Vanessa continued. More emails, more calls from unknown numbers. Once flowers delivered to my office with a card that simply read, "Please talk to me. Jay." I donated them to the reception desk. A week after the discovery, I got a text from Ashley. Heads up. Vanessa just posted a photo with James on Instagram. They're official now. My hands trembled as I opened Instagram and navigated to Vanessa's profile. There it was, a selfie of them together, his arm around her shoulders, her head leaning against him, both smiling, though James's smile seemed strained. The caption read, "Some journeys are complicated, but I'm grateful for where this one has led." The comments were a mix of confusion and congratulations from people who clearly didn't know the full story. I recognized mutual friends who must have been bewildered by this sudden development. Something snapped inside me as I stared at that photo. The careful compartmentalization I'd managed all week crumbled, and white-hot rage flooded my system. 1 week. It had taken them 1 week to go public with their relationship after destroying mine. I hurled my phone across the room, where it hit the wall and fell to the floor. Then I screamed, a raw, primal sound that tore from my throat and left it burning. I screamed until I couldn't anymore, then collapsed to the floor, my body shaking with sobs. When the storm finally passed, I crawled to retrieve my phone. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. I navigated back to that Instagram post and took a screenshot, then another of the comments section. Then I went to Facebook and screenshotted their profiles, their friend lists, anything that connected them publicly. I wasn't sure why I was doing this, what purpose these screenshots would serve, but some instinct told me to document everything, to create a record of their betrayal and its aftermath. That night I couldn't sleep. I paced my apartment until dawn, my mind cycling through memories, questions, and increasingly dark thoughts. By morning, I had reached a decision. I would talk to them, not because they deserved it, but because I needed it. I needed to look them in the eye, to understand if there was any remorse beyond the performative apologies in their messages. I sent a text to James from my cracked phone. The park near the farmer's market. 1 p.m. tomorrow. Both of you. His response came almost immediately. "We'll be there." "Thank you, Emma." The eagerness of his reply only fueled my resolve. They wanted this meeting badly. They needed my forgiveness to validate their relationship, to rewrite the narrative of how they began from betrayal to complicated but ultimately beautiful. I had no intention of giving them that gift. The next day dawned bright and clear, a perfect spring day that seemed to mock my dark mood. I dressed carefully in a simple black dress, funeral appropriate, I thought, with grim humor, and applied my makeup with precision. If I was going to face them, I would do it looking my best. The park was busy with weekend visitors when I arrived, families with children, couples walking hand in hand, joggers with their dogs. I chose a bench slightly removed from the main paths, in a quiet corner beneath a large oak tree. Then I waited. They arrived together, of course. I spotted them before they saw me, walking side by side but not touching, both scanning the park anxiously. Vanessa was wearing a simple blue sundress, her dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. James was in jeans and a button-down shirt, his posture tense. When they spotted me, they exchanged a quick glance before approaching. That silent communication, once so familiar between me and Vanessa, then between me and James, now existed between them. The observation settled like ice in my stomach. "Emma," Vanessa said as they reached me, her voice soft and hesitant. "Thank you for meeting us." I didn't respond, just looked at them both with an expression I worked hard to keep neutral. Up close, I could see the strain on their faces, dark circles under James's eyes, tension around Vanessa's mouth. "Good. Let them suffer." "Should we sit?" James asked, gesturing to the bench. I remained standing. "This won't take long." They exchanged another glance, uncertainty clear in their expressions. "I agreed to this meeting for one reason," I continued, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "I wanted to look you both in the eye and ask, was it worth it?" Vanessa flinched. "Emma!" "Was destroying our friendship of 15 years worth it, Vanessa? Was throwing away 4 years and a future together worth it, James? I want to know." James looked at the ground, his hands shoved in his pockets. "It wasn't like that," he mumbled. "Then what was it like?" I demanded, my voice rising slightly. "Explain it to me." Vanessa took a deep breath. "We never planned for this to happen, Emma. It started as just talking. James was stressed about work. I was going through that breakup with Derek, and we started texting more. Just as friends at first?" "Friends?" I repeated flatly. "Yes," she insisted. "But then, I don't know, something changed. We connected in a way neither of us expected. We tried to fight it, Emma. For months we tried." "How noble of you," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "All those months of fighting it while lying to my face. While planning my wedding?" James finally looked up. "I know how it sounds. I know what we did was terrible. But the feelings, they're real, Emma. I didn't want to hurt you, but I couldn't deny how I felt anymore." "How very romantic," I said coldly. "A love so true it required betraying the person who trusted you most." "We were going to tell you," Vanessa said, tears forming in her eyes. "Before the wedding, we weren't going to let you go through with it." "How considerate," I snapped. "And that Instagram post? Was that your way of telling me too?" Vanessa paled. "That was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was just so happy," I supplied, watching her wince at the word. "While I was picking up the pieces of my life, you were posting couple selfies like a lovesick teenager." "I took it down," she said quickly, "as soon as I realized how hurtful it was." "But you still posted it," I pointed out. "You still wanted the world to know about your relationship, regardless of who it hurt." James stepped forward slightly. "Emma, we know we can't undo what we did. We know we hurt you terribly. But we're hoping, eventually, you might be able to forgive us." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound that made a nearby couple turn to look. "Forgive you? Is that what this is about? You want my blessing so you can ride off into the sunset without guilt?" "No," Vanessa insisted, tears now streaming down her face. We miss you, Emma. I miss you. You've been my best friend since we were kids." "Should have thought of that before you slept with my fiancé," I said flatly. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. "I deserve that. I deserve all of it." "But Emma, please, isn't there any way we can, I don't know, eventually find a way forward? Maybe not now, but someday?" I looked at her, really looked at her. My best friend since childhood, the girl who knew all my secrets, who had been there for every major moment of my life, now a stranger, transformed by betrayal into someone I no longer recognized. "You know what the worst part is?" I said quietly. "It's not even that you fell in love with him. It's that you both lied to me for months. It's that you helped me plan my wedding, Vanessa. You went dress shopping with me. You discussed flower arrangements and bridesmaids' dresses and honeymoon destinations, all while sleeping with my fiancé behind my back. James looked away, shame evident in his posture. Vanessa continued crying silently. So no, I continued. I don't see a way forward. Not now. Not ever. Emma, please, Vanessa started. We're done here. I cut her off. You got what you wanted. You have each other. Leave me alone. I turned to walk away, but James caught my elbow. Emma, wait! I yanked my arm from his grasp. Don't touch me. Don't contact me. Don't come to my apartment or my parents' house. We have nothing more to say to each other. As I walked away, I heard Vanessa call my name once more, her voice breaking. I didn't look back. The anger that had sustained me through the confrontation evaporated as I reached my car, leaving me drained and hollow. I drove home on autopilot, my mind replaying their words, their expressions, the way they stood together, united even in their guilt. Back in my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the couch, staring at the ceiling. The meeting had gone exactly as I'd expected. Performative remorse, justifications disguised as explanations, and ultimately a plea for forgiveness to ease their conscience. What had I hoped to gain from it? Closure? Understanding? Some miraculous revelation that would make their betrayal hurt less? Whatever I'd been seeking, I hadn't found it. If anything, seeing them together had only deepened the wound, made it more real. My phone buzzed with a text from Ashley. How did it go? I typed back. About as well as could be expected. They're sorry but not sorry. In love but guilty. Typical. She responded immediately. Want me to come over? I'll bring wine and we can burn their pictures or something appropriately cathartic. I smiled slightly at her offer. Thanks, but I think I need to be alone tonight. Call if you change your mind. Love you, Em. I set my phone aside and closed my eyes, suddenly exhausted. The emotional toll of the confrontation had left me drained. I dozed off on the couch, only to wake hours later to darkness and a stiff neck. As I shuffled to the bedroom, my mind returned to the Instagram post that had triggered my decision to meet them. They'd taken it down after realizing how hurtful it was, Vanessa had said. They were trying to be discreet now, to respect my feelings while they built their relationship on the ruins of mine. But the damage was done. People had seen that post. Questions were being asked. The narrative was forming without my input. Poor, jilted Emma, abandoned for her more attractive best friend. I sat on the edge of the bed, a new thought taking shape. What if I could control the narrative? What if, instead of hiding in my apartment while they managed their public image, I took charge of the story? I reached for my laptop and opened a new document. At the top I typed, Things I Know About Vanessa Martin. Then I began to list everything, from innocent childhood memories to the darker secrets she'd shared with me over 15 years of friendship, the time she cheated on a final exam in college, the lies she'd told to various boyfriends, the way she'd borrowed money from her roommate's wallet in sophomore year without asking, the prescription medication she took for anxiety but told everyone was for allergies, the carefully constructed image she presented to the world that didn't match the messy reality I knew. By the time I finished, it was past midnight and the document was several pages long. I saved it, then started a new one. Things I Know About James Porter. This list was shorter but no less damning. His complicated relationship with his controlling father, the recreational drug use in college he'd never want his conservative co-workers to know about, the time he'd backed into a parked car and driven away without leaving a note, the way he'd been passed over for promotion twice, despite telling everyone it had been his choice to stay in his current position. When I finished, I sat back and stared at the two documents, a cold sense of satisfaction settling over me. They thought they knew me, sweet, forgiving Emma who would eventually come around, who would give them her blessing because that's the kind of person she was. They had no idea what I was capable of when betrayed. I closed the laptop without deleting the documents. I wasn't sure yet what I would do with this information, if anything, but having it compiled, ready to use if needed, gave me a sense of power I hadn't felt since finding those messages on James's computer. The next morning, I woke with a clearer head and a sense of purpose I'd been lacking. I couldn't change what had happened, but I could control what happened next. I could choose how to respond, how to rebuild, how to move forward. First step, reclaiming my space. I spent the day rearranging furniture, moving the bed to a different wall, replacing the living room curtains with new ones in a color James had always disliked. Small changes, but they made the apartment feel more mine and less ours. Second step, reconnecting. I called Ashley and accepted her standing invitation for dinner. I texted a few other friends I'd been avoiding, suggesting coffee or drinks in the coming weeks. I called my parents and had a conversation that didn't revolve around James and Vanessa. Third step, reclaiming my narrative. I updated my social media profiles, removing any mention of my engagement and changing my relationship status to single without announcement or explanation. I posted a photo of my new living room arrangement with the caption, "Fresh start, fresh perspective. New beginnings." It was subtle but clear. I was moving on, at least publicly. Let people draw their own conclusions. The response was immediate. Likes, supportive comments, and several private messages asking if I was okay. I responded to each with a simple, "Taking it day by day, but I'm doing all right. Thanks for checking in." By evening, I felt more in control than I had in days. The pain was still there, the betrayal still raw, but alongside it was something new. A determination to not just survive this, but to emerge stronger. Different, certainly, but stronger. As I was making dinner, my phone rang with an unknown number. Thinking it might be James or Vanessa again, I almost ignored it. At the last moment, curiosity won out. "Hello? Emma? It's Jake. Jake Lawson." Jake was James's best friend, and would have been his best man at the wedding. We'd never been particularly close, but I'd always liked him. "Oh, hi Jake," I replied, surprised. "What's up?" He hesitated. I wanted to check in on you, and to say that I'm really sorry about what happened." "Thanks," I said cautiously, wondering which side he was taking in all this. "I appreciate that. Look, I'll be honest, James is staying at my place right now. Or was. He moved in with Vanessa yesterday. Something twisted painfully in my chest at the confirmation of what I'd suspected. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know that just because I'm letting him crash at my place doesn't mean I approve of what they did," Jake said firmly. "It was a shitty thing to do to anyone, but especially to you." His loyalty, even divided as it was, touched me unexpectedly. "Thank you, Jake. That ... means a lot, actually. James told me about your meeting yesterday," he continued. "He said you were, I don't know, colder than he expected." I laughed bitterly. What did he expect? That I'd give them my blessing? "I think, yeah, kind of," Jake admitted. "He's convinced himself that if he'd just told you sooner, if you hadn't found out the way you did, you would have eventually understood. He knows you always see the best in people." The insight into James's thinking was both infuriating and valuable. "He never really knew me then," I said quietly. "Maybe not," Jake agreed. "Look, I don't expect us to be friends or anything. I just wanted you to know that not everyone thinks what they did was okay, even the people still in James's life." After we hung up, I sat with this new information. James and Vanessa were living together now. They'd taken the next step in their relationship, seemingly unconcerned about the optics or about how it might affect me. But not everyone was on their side. Jake's call had reminded me that I wasn't alone, that not everyone would accept their complicated journey to true love. Narrative. That night, I returned to the documents I'd created, my lists of secrets and vulnerabilities. In the cold light of day, some of my entries seemed petty or irrelevant. Others, though, remained powerful. I wasn't ready to use this information. Not yet. But I was increasingly certain that I would, eventually. Not out of blind revenge, but because actions should have consequences. Because they didn't get to destroy my life and walk away unscathed. The question was, what form would those consequences take? Over the next few weeks, I fell into a new routine. Work became my sanctuary. I took on additional projects, stayed late, and earned praise from Linda for my dedication. I reconnected with friends, careful to avoid those who were equally close to Vanessa. I went to therapy, something I'd considered in the past but never prioritized. Through it all, I gathered information. It became almost a hobby, keeping tabs on James and Vanessa through mutual connections, social media, and occasional updates from Jake, who had become an unexpected ally. I learned that they were trying to keep their relationship low-key out of respect for me, but that Vanessa had already moved most of her things into James's new apartment. I discovered that some of our mutual friends had quietly distanced themselves from the couple, while others had accepted their version of events and remained close. I found out that James's parents, who had always loved me, were struggling to welcome Vanessa into the family with the same enthusiasm. Each piece of information was filed away, not out of obsession, but with the cool detachment of someone gathering evidence for a case yet to be made. 2 months after the discovery, I got an unexpected text from Lisa, one of Vanessa's co-workers whom I'd met several times at office parties. "Emma, not sure if you want to know this, but V and J just announced their engagement at our office happy hour. Thought you should hear it from someone rather than seeing it online." I stared at the message, a curious numbness spreading through me. Engaged, after 2 months. The ring on Vanessa's finger, probably purchased with the money refunded from my canceled wedding venue. I typed back, "Thanks for letting me know." Then I set my phone down and waited for the pain to hit. To my surprise, what came instead was a calm, cold clarity. This changed things. This accelerated my timeline. I opened my laptop and pulled up the documents I'd been refining over the weeks. Then I opened a new one and titled it simply, "The Plan." By midnight, I had outlined my approach. It wasn't about destroying them, though part of me certainly wanted to. It was about justice, about consequences, about making sure they couldn't simply rewrite history to cast themselves as star-crossed lovers, and me as an unfortunate but necessary casualty. The key, I realized, would be the wedding. Their wedding. The event that should have been mine, now repurposed for their love story. The perfect setting for the truth to finally be told. But I needed more information. Dates, locations, guest lists, and for that I needed help. The next day, I invited Ashley over for dinner and laid out my thoughts. "You want to crash their wedding?" she asked, eyes wide as I explained my emerging plan. "Not exactly," I clarified. "I want to be invited." Ashley stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "Why would they invite you? And why would you want to go?" I took a sip of wine, choosing my words carefully. "Because they're still trying to normalize what they did. Having me there, having me give my apparent blessing, would complete their narrative." Understanding dawned on Ashley's face. "And instead you want to what? Object dramatically during the ceremony?" "Nothing so cliché," I assured her. "I'm thinking more along the lines of a toast. The maid of honor's toast that should have been mine." "Emma," Ashley said slowly, concern evident in her voice. "That sounds, I don't know, kind of dark. Even for what they deserve. I'm not going to do anything illegal or physically harmful. I promised. I just want to tell the truth, the complete truth, in front of everyone they care about. Let their friends and family know exactly how their great love story began." Ashley studied me for a long moment. "And this will give you closure? This will help you move on?" I considered her question seriously. "I think it will. I think I need to take back some power in this situation. I need to know that they didn't just get away with it." "Okay," she said finally. "What do you need from me?" "Information," I replied. "I need to know their wedding date, venue, everything you can find out. And I need you to help me get invited." Ashley raised an eyebrow. "How exactly am I supposed to do that?" "Jake," I said simply. "He's still James's best friend, still going to be his best man. But he's sympathetic to me. If he suggests to James that inviting me would be the ultimate gesture of goodwill, a way to finally put the past behind us all." "That's manipulative as hell, Emma," Ashley commented, though she didn't sound entirely disapproving. "I learned from the best," I replied dryly. She smiled slightly. "I'll talk to Jake. No promises." Over the next month, my plan took shape with unexpected precision. Jake, after initial reluctance, agreed to help, partly out of loyalty to me, partly out of his own lingering disapproval of how James had handled everything. "They've set a date," he informed me during a clandestine coffee meeting. "New Year's Eve. 6 months from now. Vanessa wants a winter wedding." I nodded, adding this to my mental file. "Venue? The Bellamy Hotel downtown. Same place they met at that charity gala 3 years ago," Jake said, looking uncomfortable. "When you introduced them." The irony wasn't lost on me. How fitting. "James is still on the fence about inviting you," Jake continued. "Vanessa is pushing for it, though. Says it would heal old wounds and show everyone they have nothing to hide." I smiled slightly. "She always did care too much about appearances. What exactly are you planning, Emma?" Jake asked, leaning forward with concern in his eyes. "I want to help you, but not if you're going to do something crazy." "Nothing crazy," I assured him. "Just a moment of truth. They've controlled the narrative so far. I want my turn." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. I'll keep pushing the invitation angle. But Emma, whatever you're planning, just make sure it's worth it. Make sure it actually helps you move forward instead of keeping you stuck in all this." His concern touched me. "I promise." This isn't about staying stuck in the past. It's about closing this chapter on my terms. As the months passed, I refined my plan while simultaneously rebuilding my life. I was promoted at work, moved to a new apartment in a different neighborhood, even went on a few dates. Nothing serious, but steps toward normalcy. Through it all, I maintained the cold focus of my purpose. The documents on my laptop grew more detailed. My research expanded to include Vanessa's entire family, James's professional colleagues, the guest list Jake had managed to secure for me. I was methodical, careful. This wasn't about blind rage anymore. That had burned itself out long ago. This was about precision, about calculated impact, about a reckoning long overdue. 4 months after their engagement announcement, the invitation arrived. A thick cream envelope with elegant calligraphy on the front, Emma Clark. Inside, the expected details of the New Year's Eve wedding at the Bellamy Hotel, and a handwritten note from Vanessa. Emma, I know this is unexpected and perhaps unwelcome, but it would mean the world to both of us if you could be there. We've all lost so much already. Maybe this can be a new beginning for all of us. With hope. Vanessa. I traced my finger over her familiar handwriting, a smile forming on my lips. They'd taken the bait. The final piece was in place. That evening I called Ashley. It came, I told her simply. You're really going through with this? She asked, her voice a mix of concern and reluctant admiration. I am, I confirmed, and I need your help with one last thing. Name it. I need you to help me write the perfect wedding toast. The next 2 months were a flurry of preparation. I RSVP'd with a simple, I would be honored to attend, sending Vanessa into a frenzy of excited texts that I responded to with measured warmth. I selected a dress, elegant but understated, nothing that would draw attention until I chose to take the spotlight. I rehearsed my toast until every word, every pause, every revelation was perfectly timed for maximum impact. As December arrived, bringing with it holiday decorations and a blanket of snow across the city, the final countdown began. I met with Jake one last time, confirming the reception details, the timing of the toasts, the seating arrangement. She's put you at table 3, he informed me, with some of her cousins and a few mutual friends. Close enough to the head table to show you're important, far enough that you won't have to interact much. Perfect. I nodded. And the toast order? Best man first, then maid of honor, then open to anyone else who wants to speak. Jake confirmed. You'll have your chance. He hesitated, then added, It's not too late to back out, Emma. No one would blame you. I smiled gently. I've come too far to back out now. But thank you, Jake, for everything. The night before the wedding, I sat alone in my new apartment, reviewing my notes one final time. The secrets, the betrayals, the carefully gathered evidence, all of it organized for maximum impact. My toast, revised and refined over weeks, was memorized, ready to be delivered with the perfect balance of emotion and control. In less than 24 hours, James and Vanessa would face the consequences of their actions. In less than 24 hours, their perfect day would become a day they'd never forget, for entirely different reasons. I closed my laptop and poured myself a glass of wine, raising it in a solitary toast to the upcoming reckoning. To truth, I whispered to the empty room, and to justice served cold. New Year's Eve dawned bright and clear, the previous night's snowfall glistening under a brilliant winter sun. I took my time getting ready, a long shower, careful makeup application, hair styled in elegant waves. The dress I'd chosen was deep burgundy, almost the color of dried blood, with a modest neckline and a hem that fell just below my knees. Sophisticated, appropriate, memorable. As I fastened my grandmother's pearl earrings, the ones James had once said made me look old-fashioned, I studied my reflection in the mirror. I looked calm, composed, nothing like the shattered woman I'd been 10 months ago. Nothing like the vengeful fury I'd been in the months that followed. This new Emma was something else entirely, cool, calculated, in control. Ashley picked me up at 4:30, giving my outfit an approving nod. You look amazing, she said. How do you feel? Ready, I replied simply. She squeezed my hand. Remember, whatever happens in there, I've got your back. And your escape car, she added with a slight smile. The Bellamy Hotel was transformed for the occasion, crystal chandeliers gleaming, white roses and silver accents everywhere, fairy lights twinkling against the early winter darkness. The ceremony was scheduled for 6 p.m., with the reception to follow immediately in the grand ballroom. I slipped into the ceremony space quietly, choosing a seat near the back. A few heads turned as I entered, people who knew our history, surprised to see me there. I acknowledged them with a slight nod but kept my expression neutral. As the music began and the wedding party started their procession, I maintained my composure. Vanessa's maid of honor, her cousin Sophie, who'd been her second choice after me, looked nervous as she walked down the aisle. Jake, as best man, caught my eye as he passed, giving me an almost imperceptible nod. Then came Vanessa, radiant in a designer gown that probably cost more than our entire canceled wedding. Her eyes scanned the crowd as she walked, and when she spotted me, a small, uncertain smile formed on her lips. I returned it with a placid one of my own. The ceremony itself was brief and traditional. I sat through it with detached interest, noting how James's voice shook slightly during his vows, how Vanessa's eyes glistened with tears that I once would have believed were of pure happiness. Now I knew better. Now I saw the undercurrent of discomfort, the shadow of guilt that darkened their perfect day. Good. Let them feel it. At the reception, I navigated the cocktail hour with practiced ease, accepting condolences and curious glances with gracious smiles. Yes, it was difficult at first. I told one of Vanessa's aunts who'd asked how I was doing. But time heals, doesn't it? We can't control who people love. The lie tasted sweet on my tongue, a prelude to the truth to come. Dinner was served, speeches were given. Jake's best man toast was appropriately funny and touching, avoiding any mention of the complicated history between the bride, groom, and me. Sophie's maid of honor speech was brief and generic, clearly uncomfortable with her role in the proceedings. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. The MC announced that the floor was open for additional toasts. I caught Vanessa's eye across the room and raised my hand slightly. Her expression flickered with surprise, then cautious hope. "We have Emma Clark," the MC announced, handing me the microphone as I approached the small stage. A hush fell over the room. I could feel every eye on me, curious, apprehensive, wondering what the ex-fiancé could possibly have to say. James and Vanessa sat at the head table, both frozen in anticipation. I smiled, taking my time to survey the crowd before speaking. Every face turned toward me, every ear straining to hear what would come next. "For those who don't know me, I'm Emma," I began, my voice clear and steady. "Vanessa's oldest friend and James's former fiancé." A murmur rippled through the crowd at my directness. "I know many of you are surprised to see me here today," I continued. "Truthfully, I'm a little surprised to be here myself. But when I received this invitation, I knew I had to come. Because some stories need an ending, don't they? Some truths need to be told." I locked eyes with Vanessa, whose smile had begun to falter. Vanessa and I have known each other since we were 7 years old. 15 years of friendship, of secrets shared, of trust built. I paused, letting the weight of those words settle. James and I were together for 4 years, engaged to be married in what would have been my dream wedding. I took a sip of champagne, my gaze never leaving the head table. 10 months ago, I discovered that the two people I trusted most in the world had been having an affair behind my back. For 7 months, they lied to my face. For 7 months, Vanessa helped me plan my wedding while sleeping with my fiancé. Gasps echoed through the ballroom. James's mother covered her mouth in shock. Vanessa's father's face darkened with anger. Whether at me or at them, I couldn't tell. But this isn't about me. I continued smoothly. This is about truth, about consequences, about the stories we tell ourselves and others. I smiled directly at Vanessa, whose face had drained of color. You see, Vanessa has always been careful about the image she presents to the world. Always the perfect friend, the loyal daughter, the dedicated employee. But I know the real Vanessa. And with that, I began. Methodically, precisely, I laid out the secrets she'd shared with me over 15 years. Not all of them, just the ones that would matter most to the people in this room. The lies she'd told her parents about where their money had gone during college, the times she'd backstabbed coworkers to get ahead, the cruel comments she'd made about members of her own family, some of whom were sitting in this very room. With each revelation, her face grew paler. James looked between us, horrified and confused. And James? I pivoted smoothly. The perfect architect with the perfect future. Except for the cocaine habit in college that his employers would be very interested to know about. Except for the time he told me his mother was suffocating and his father was a failure. James's parents stared at their son in shock. His father's expression hardened into something I'd never seen before. But my favorite truth, I continued, my voice dropping slightly so that everyone had to lean in to hear, is about their love story. The one they've been so careful to curate. Did you know it started at my bridal shower? While I was opening gifts, Vanessa and James were exchanging explicit texts. While I was trying on wedding dresses, they were meeting in hotel rooms. The room was so silent you could hear a pin drop. Every eye was fixed on me, some in horror, some in fascination, some in growing anger directed at the bride and groom. "I have the receipts," I added casually. "The messages, the hotel confirmations, the timeline of their betrayal, all documented. I'd be happy to share them with anyone who's interested." Vanessa was openly crying now, mascara running down her cheeks. James looked like he might be sick. "So," I concluded, raising my glass, "here's my toast to the happy couple. May your marriage be exactly what you deserve. May you always remember how your love story truly began. And may you never forget this moment when the truth finally came to light." I took a deliberate sip of champagne, then placed the microphone gently on the nearest table and walked toward the exit, my head held high. Behind me, chaos erupted. I heard Vanessa's sob, James's attempt to call for calm, the rising voices of shocked and angry guests. None of it mattered. My part was done. Ashley was waiting by the door, eyes wide. "Holy shit, Emma," she whispered as we made our quick exit. "You actually did it." "I did," I confirmed, a weight lifting from my shoulders with each step away from the ballroom. "And now it's over. All of it." In the car, speeding away from the Bellamy Hotel, I watched the snow begin to fall again, covering the city in a fresh blanket of white. A new year would begin in just a few hours. A new chapter, untainted by betrayal and lies. I had done what I set out to do. I had taken back my narrative, exposed their truth, ensured they couldn't simply erase me from their story. The consequences would unfold without me now. Family relationships strained, professional reputations questioned, the foundation of their marriage cracked before it had even begun. Was it revenge? Perhaps. Was it justice? I thought so. Most importantly, it was closure. On my terms, not theirs. As we drove through the snowy streets, I finally felt something I hadn't experienced in nearly a year. Peace. The kind that comes not from forgiveness, but from knowing that you stood up for yourself when it mattered most. "Where to now?" Ashley asked, glancing at me as she navigated the slippery roads. I smiled, looking forward to the road ahead, literally and figuratively. "Anywhere," I replied. "I'm free." The drive back to my apartment was quiet, snow falling gently outside the car windows. Ashley kept glancing at me as if expecting me to break down, but I felt strangely calm. The adrenaline that had carried me through my toast was ebbing away, leaving behind a curious sense of emptiness, not unpleasant, just vacant, like a house after all the furniture has been moved out. "You want to talk about it?" Ashley finally asked as we stopped at a red light. I watched a couple hurry across the street, huddled together against the cold, and shook my head. Not yet. The truth was, I didn't know what to say. I'd spent months planning this moment, envisioning it from every angle, rehearsing my words until they flowed like poetry. But I hadn't spent much time thinking about what would come after, about who Emma Clark would be once she'd had her revenge. When we reached my apartment building, Ashley turned to me. "I'm coming up. Non-negotiable. I've got a bottle of champagne in the trunk for midnight. We're doing this New Year's thing properly." I smiled gratefully. She knew me well enough not to leave me alone with my thoughts tonight. My phone had been on silent since we left the hotel, but when I pulled it from my purse in the elevator, the screen was alight with notifications. Missed calls from Jake, a flurry of texts from numbers I didn't recognize, and most recently, a single message from Vanessa. "How could you?" I showed it to Ashley, who rolled her eyes. The audacity. Delete it. But I didn't. Something made me keep it, a reminder of how twisted her perception was, even now, as if I were the one who had transgressed. My apartment felt like a sanctuary after the tension of the wedding. I kicked off my heels, unzipped my dress, and changed into comfortable clothes while Ashley opened the champagne early. "To the most badass woman I know," she toasted, handing me a glass. "You walked into the lion's den and made them eat each other." I clinked my glass against hers, but the triumph I'd expected to feel remained elusive. What I'd done tonight, it had been necessary, calculated, just. But it wasn't quite as satisfying as I'd imagined during those long nights planning my revenge. "Was it worth it?" Ashley asked, echoing my thoughts as she curled up on my couch. I considered her question carefully. "Yes," I said finally, "but not in the way I expected." "What do you mean?" "I thought I'd feel, I don't know, victorious. Like I'd won something." I swirled the champagne in my glass, watching the bubbles rise. "But it's more like I've put down something heavy I've been carrying. Relief more than triumph. Ashley nodded slowly. That makes sense. You cleared the ledger. Now you can move on without feeling like they got away with everything. Exactly. We stayed up until midnight, watching the ball drop on TV and welcoming the new year with fresh glasses of champagne. As the celebration unfolded on screen, crowds cheering and couples kissing, I thought about James and Vanessa. Had they salvaged any part of their wedding reception? Were they together right now, huddled in some hotel room, trying to decide what to do next? Or had they separated to lick their wounds alone? I was surprised to realize I didn't much care. The obsessive need to know their every move, to track the progress of their relationship, it had vanished, as if exorcised by my public unveiling of their secrets. Happy New Year, Em, Ashley said, squeezing my hand. Happy New Year, I replied, meaning it. It would be, I decided. A truly new beginning. Ashley stayed on my couch that night, both of us a little drunk and unwilling to venture back into the snowy night. I fell asleep quickly, exhausted by the emotional toll of the day, and slept more soundly than I had in months. No dreams of betrayal, no waking in the middle of the night with my heart racing, just peaceful, restorative darkness. Morning arrived with pale winter sunlight streaming through my bedroom window and the smell of coffee brewing. I found Ashley in my kitchen, scrolling through her phone with an expression of fascinated horror. What? I asked, grabbing a mug from the cabinet. She looked up. You've gone viral, sort of. In a local way? What are you talking about? She handed me her phone. On the screen was a social media post from someone I vaguely recognized, one of Vanessa's cousins, I thought. The post was a play-by-play of my wedding toast, embellished in places but largely accurate. It had hundreds of comments and shares. That's not what I expected, I said, skimming through the comments. Most were supportive, expressing shock at James and Vanessa's behavior and admiration for my epic takedown. A few criticized me for ruining a wedding, but they were quickly shouted down by others. There's more, Ashley said, taking her phone back and opening another app. Apparently James's firm is trending locally too. Someone tagged them in a post about the cocaine architect and it's getting attention. A twinge of unease ran through me. My goal had been to expose their betrayal to the people who mattered, their family, their friends, the social circle that had witnessed my humiliation. I hadn't anticipated the potentially wider ramifications of my actions in the age of social media. I never mentioned his firm by name, I said, frowning. You didn't have to. People know where he works. Ashley looked at me carefully. Are you having regrets? I considered the question, cradling my coffee mug. No, I said finally. I told the truth. If there are consequences beyond what I anticipated, well, actions have consequences. They taught me that lesson pretty thoroughly, didn't they? Ashley nodded, but she still looked concerned. Just be prepared. This might get messier than you planned. She was right, of course. By lunchtime, my phone was ringing constantly with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I finally answered one, only to discover it was a local news blogger seeking comment on the wedding toast that's breaking the internet. I hung up immediately and turned off my phone. I should have expected this, I groaned to Ashley, who was preparing to leave. People love public drama. It'll die down, she assured me. Some celebrity will do something stupid tomorrow, and everyone will forget about one wedding in our city. Just lay low for a few days. After she left, I spent the day tidying my apartment and steadfastly avoiding turning my phone back on. The quiet was nice, a contrast to the emotional chaos of the previous day. I took a long bath, read a book I'd been meaning to get to for months, and ordered delivery for dinner. A normal, peaceful day, exactly what I needed. But by evening, curiosity got the better of me. I turned my phone back on, bracing for the flood of notifications. Among the missed calls and texts from strangers was a message from Jake. Call me when you can. It's important. I hesitated, then dialed his number. He answered immediately. Emma, Jesus, I've been trying to reach you all day. Sorry, I turned off my phone. It was ringing nonstop. Yeah, I bet. He sighed heavily. Look, I thought you should know what happened after you left. I sank onto my couch, suddenly tense. Tell me. It was chaos, obviously. Vanessa was hysterical. James tried to do damage control, saying you were bitter and making things up, but nobody was buying it. His parents left right after you did. His dad wouldn't even look at him. Vanessa's family was split between comforting her and looking like they wanted to murder her. I closed my eyes, picturing the scene. It was more or less what I'd expected. The reception basically fell apart. Jake continued. Most guests left within an hour. I stayed until the bitter end, which came pretty quickly. James was... I've never seen him like that, Emma. He was destroyed. Something twisted uncomfortably in my chest. Are they still together? As far as I know, they left together at least. But I don't know what happened after. James hasn't returned my calls. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. Thanks for telling me. There's more, he said reluctantly. Someone from his firm was at the wedding, a partner's wife or something. The whole cocaine thing. There's talk that the firm is going to look into it. He could lose his job, Emma. The twinge of unease I'd felt earlier returned, stronger now. I didn't mean for that to happen, I said quietly. I just wanted them to face the people they'd lied to. I know, Jake sighed. But you dropped a nuclear bomb. The fallout is going to be wide-ranging. After we hung up, I sat in the growing darkness of my apartment, thinking about Jake's words. The image of James destroyed kept returning to me, eliciting complicated emotions. Not regret exactly, not guilt, but something adjacent to both, a discomfort with the extent of the damage I might have caused. I'd wanted justice, not scorched earth. I'd wanted them to face consequences within their social circle, not potentially lose their livelihoods or become local pariahs. But even as these thoughts troubled me, another voice in my head, colder, harder, reminded me that they hadn't considered the potential devastation of their actions either. They hadn't worried about destroying my world when they betrayed me. Why should I agonize over the ruins of theirs? I was still sitting in the dark, caught in this internal debate, when my doorbell rang. For a moment I considered ignoring it. It was after 9, and I wasn't expecting anyone. But curiosity won out again, and I peered through the peephole. Vanessa stood in the hallway, still in her wedding dress. My heart hammered against my ribs as I stared at her through the tiny lens. Her makeup was streaked down her face, her elaborate updo falling in disarray around her shoulders. The pristine white dress was crumpled and stained at the hem from the snowy streets. I should not open the door, I told myself. Nothing good could come from this confrontation. But even as I thought it, my hand was turning the lock, pulling the door open to face the woman who had once been my best friend. "What are you doing here?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. Vanessa stared at me with red-rimmed eyes. "Can I come in?" Her voice was hoarse, as if she'd been crying for hours. Every instinct warned against it, but I found myself stepping aside. She moved past me into the apartment, the voluminous skirt of her wedding dress brushing against my legs in a whisper of expensive fabric. I turned on a lamp, illuminating the surreal scene. Vanessa, in her ruined wedding finery, standing in the middle of my living room, looking lost and broken. "Why are you here?" I asked again, crossing my arms. She sank onto my couch without asking, the dress billowing around her. "I don't know," she admitted. I needed to see you. To understand how you could do that to me? On my wedding day." The audacity of her question shocked a laugh out of me. "Are you serious right now? How I could do that to you? You humiliated me in front of everyone I care about," she said, tears welling in her eyes again. "You told them things I told you in confidence. Private things. You destroyed my reputation, my relationship with my family. And you fucked my fiancé behind my back for 7 months. I cut in coldly, while helping me plan my wedding. While listening to me talk about our future together, while I trusted you completely." She flinched but didn't back down. "What we did was wrong. I've acknowledged that. I've apologized for that. But what you did tonight was cruel, Emma. Calculated cruelty, as opposed to your accidental cruelty?" I asked with bitter sarcasm. "Your 7 months of whoops didn't mean to hurt you betrayal? That was different," she insisted. "How? How was it different, Vanessa?" "Because we fell in love," she cried, more tears spilling down her cheeks. "We didn't mean for it to happen. We fought it. We felt terrible about it. But the feelings were real, and eventually, we couldn't deny them anymore." I stared at her in disbelief. Even now, she was clinging to the romantic narrative they'd constructed. Star-crossed lovers who couldn't help themselves, who'd tried to do the right thing but were overwhelmed by the power of their feelings. "Let me ask you something," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. "If I had never found those messages, if you had told me about your relationship as you claimed you were planning to do, what did you expect to happen next?" She looked confused. "What do you mean?" "I mean, what was the best-case scenario in your mind? You tell me you've been sleeping with James, that you're in love, that our friendship and my relationship were both casualties of your great passion. Then what? We all become friends? I give you my blessing? I stand up at your wedding as your maid of honor and pretend the groom isn't the man who was supposed to be my husband." Vanessa's eyes dropped to her lap, unable to hold my gaze. "I don't know," she admitted. "I guess I hoped that eventually, once the shock wore off, you'd see that James and I were meant to be together. That our happiness could somehow compensate for your pain. The sheer self-absorption of her answer left me momentarily speechless. In her mind, their betrayal would be justified, erased even, by the grand love story they were living. My broken heart was simply the price of admission to their happily ever after. "You still don't get it," I said finally. "You think tonight was about revenge?" "It wasn't. It was about consequences. It was about truth. You and James created a fiction where you were the romantic heroes and I was just collateral damage, an unfortunate footnote in your love story. Tonight I rewrote that narrative." She looked up at me, mascara streaked down her face. "Why didn't you just confront us privately? Why did you have to destroy everything?" "The same reason you came to my apartment tonight still wearing your wedding dress," I replied evenly. "For the drama of it. For the symbolism. For the narrative impact." A flicker of recognition passed across her face. The understanding that despite everything that had happened between us, I still knew her better than almost anyone. Vanessa had always had a flair for the dramatic, had always constructed her life like the plot of a movie she was starring in. Coming to my door in her ruined wedding dress was exactly the kind of symbolic gesture she would think meaningful. "James might lose his job," she said after a moment, her voice small. "His firm is taking the cocaine allegations seriously." "That's unfortunate," I replied, not allowing myself to feel the twinge of guilt that threatened to surface, "but probably unavoidable when you lie to the people closest to you. Secrets have a way of unraveling once they start to come loose. Is that what you wanted? To destroy our lives completely?" I sighed, suddenly tired of this conversation, of Vanessa's persistent self-victimization. "What I wanted was for you both to experience a fraction of the humiliation and betrayal you inflicted on me. What I wanted was for your perfect love story to be tainted by the truth of how it began. What I wanted was justice, Vanessa. And I got it." She stared at me for a long moment, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I never thought you could be so cold." "Neither did I admitted. "But then, I never thought my best friend could betray me so completely either. We've both learned things about ourselves this year." Vanessa stood abruptly, the wedding dress rustling around her. "I should go." "Yes," I agreed. "You should." She moved toward the door, then paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Do you think you'll ever forgive us?" The question caught me off guard. I considered it seriously, searching within myself for the answer. "I don't know," I said finally. "Maybe someday. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying this anger forever would be exhausting." She nodded slowly, as if this was the answer she'd expected. "For what it's worth," she said softly, "I am sorry, Emma. Not just for how you found out, but for all of it. I miss my best friend." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. I watched her walk out the door, the train of her wedding dress dragging behind her like the ghost of what might have been, and felt a curious sense of finality. Our confrontation hadn't brought the catharsis I might have expected, but it had closed a chapter. She'd had her say. I'd had mine. It was over. Sleep didn't come easily that night. I lay awake replaying the conversation with Vanessa, wondering if I'd said the right things, if I'd maintained the upper hand, if I'd revealed too much of my own lingering pain. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on sleep altogether and made myself a cup of tea, carrying it to the window to watch the deserted, snow-covered street below. James might lose his job. The knowledge nagged at me, a pebble in my shoe I couldn't shake loose. It hadn't been my intention to endanger his livelihood, just to expose their betrayal to the people who needed to know the truth. But I'd been careless, reckless even, in my choice of revelations. I'd wanted to hurt him, yes, but not destroy him professionally. Or had I? The cold, hard voice in my head, the one that had guided my revenge planning, whispered that perhaps I had wanted exactly that. That in my darkest moments, I'd wanted James to lose everything, just as I had lost everything that mattered to me. I sighed, pressing my forehead against the cool glass of the window. The truth, as always, probably lay somewhere in between. I'd wanted justice, and justice often came with unintended consequences. I couldn't control how people reacted to the truth, only whether the truth was told. By morning, I'd made a decision. I wouldn't reach out to James's firm to retract what I'd said. That would undermine everything I'd done, suggesting my words had been lies born of bitterness rather than truth. But I wouldn't fan the flames either. If anyone from the media or his workplace contacted me, I would decline to comment further. The truth was out there now. What happened next wasn't my responsibility. I spent the first day of the new year cleaning my apartment thoroughly, as if I could scrub away the lingering presence of Vanessa's visit, along with the dust on my bookshelves. I did laundry, organized my closet, and finally took down the small Christmas tree I'd half-heartedly decorated in December. By evening, my apartment sparkled, and I felt lighter somehow, as if the physical act of cleaning had helped clear out the emotional debris as well. I ordered takeout from my favorite Thai restaurant and was just settling in to enjoy it when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. After yesterday's bombardment, my first instinct was to ignore it. But something intuition perhaps made me answer. Emma Clark speaking. Emma. James's voice, rough and unfamiliar. Don't hang up. Please. My hand tightened around the phone. What do you want, James? 5 minutes, he said. That's all I'm asking for. 5 minutes on the phone. I should have hung up. Should have blocked his number immediately. But curiosity, that persistent weakness of mine, won out again. 5 minutes, I agreed reluctantly. Starting now, he exhaled shakily. First, I want to say that I deserved what you did. The things you said at the wedding. They were true. All of them. And I had it coming. His admission surprised me. I'd expected defensiveness, anger, accusations, not this immediate capitulation. But Emma, he continued, his voice cracking slightly, the thing about the cocaine, it's going to cost me my job. They've already put me on administrative leave pending an investigation. My career, everything I've worked for, it's over. The guilt I'd been trying to suppress surged up again. I'm sorry about that, I said and meant it. It wasn't my intention to affect your career. Wasn't it? He challenged, a hint of the old James breaking through. You knew exactly what you were doing, Emma. You calculated every word for maximum damage. I couldn't deny it. Yes, I admitted. I wanted to hurt you like you hurt me. But I was thinking about your parents, your friends, Vanessa's family, not your employers. Well, they were there too, he said bitterly. And now I'm screwed. I closed my eyes, leaning back against my couch. What do you want from me, James? An apology? A retraction? I want ... He hesitated, and I could picture him running a hand through his hair the way he always did when stressed. I don't know what I want. I guess I wanted you to know the consequences of what you did. I wanted you to feel some of the responsibility. The way you felt responsibility for destroying our relationship, for betraying my trust. I couldn't keep the edge from my voice. Or did you manage to convince yourself that was all just fate, just following your heart? That's not fair, he protested. I've acknowledged what I did was wrong. I've apologized. No, I corrected him. You've apologized for how I found out. You've apologized for the timing. But you've never once apologized for the actual betrayal, for choosing to cheat rather than be honest, for putting your desires above my dignity. The silence that followed told me I'd hit a nerve. When he finally spoke, his voice was quieter. You're right. I never really apologized for that. I was too busy justifying it even to myself. I waited, unsure where this conversation was heading. I am sorry, Emma, he said at last. Truly sorry for betraying you, for not having the courage to end things properly before starting something with Vanessa. For all of it. The apology, the first genuine one he'd offered, loosened something in my chest, a knot of tension I hadn't realized I was still carrying. Thank you for saying that. It doesn't change anything, does it? He asked, a note of resignation in his voice. No, I confirmed gently. It doesn't undo what happened, but it matters that you said it. Another silence stretched between us, filled with the ghosts of everything we'd been to each other, the love, the trust, the shared dreams, all turned to ash by his choices. Your 5 minutes are up, I said finally. Right, he cleared his throat. For what it's worth, Emma, despite how it ended, I did love you. That wasn't a lie. I considered this, wondering if it made things better or worse. Maybe you did, I allowed, but not enough. After we hung up, I sat motionless on my couch, my Thai food forgotten. The conversation with James had left me unsettled, stirring up emotions I thought I'd finally put to rest. His apology, belated but seemingly sincere, had touched something in me I'd tried to harden against him. But more troubling was the news about his job. Administrative leave pending investigation. The possible end of his career. The cold voice in my head reminded me that his actions had derailed my life. Perhaps it was only fair that my actions should derail his. An eye for an eye, But the Emma I'd been before all this, the one who believed in kindness, in taking the high road, whispered that two wrongs didn't make a right, that adding to the sum total of pain in the world wasn't justice but vengeance. I didn't know which voice to listen to anymore. The next morning, I returned to work, grateful for the distraction. Linda called me into her office almost immediately. "Emma," she began, studying me with uncharacteristic hesitation. "I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me." My stomach tightened. "Of course. There's a story going around," she said carefully. "About what happened at your ex-fiancé's wedding. Something about a speech you gave?" I nodded slowly. "It's true. I was invited to their wedding, and I gave a toast that revealed some uncomfortable truths about them both." Linda's expression was unreadable. "Including information about cocaine use?" "Yes," I admitted. "James used cocaine recreationally in college. I mentioned it because his parents were present and they had no idea. I didn't name his workplace or suggest it was an ongoing issue." She nodded, seeming to digest this. "The reason I'm asking is that we just got a call from the Henderson Group." I blinked in surprise. The Henderson Group was our biggest client, a healthcare conglomerate I'd been working with for over a year. What did they want? To ensure that their account manager, that's you, wasn't involved in any unsavory publicity. Linda's tone was gentle but firm. "They're very image-conscious, as you know." "I understand," I said, my mind racing. "What did you tell them?" "That I would speak with you and get back to them." She leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. "Emma, off the record, what happened?" "The real story, not the social media version." So I told her, as concisely as possible, about finding the messages, about the betrayal by my fiancé and best friend, about the wedding invitation and my decision to accept it, about the toast that had revealed their secrets. When I finished, Linda was silent for a long moment, her fingers steepled under her chin. "That's quite a story," she said finally. "I know it sounds dramatic," I acknowledged. "And I know it wasn't the most professional way to handle things. But it happened outside of work, and it won't affect my performance here." "I believe you," she said, nodding slowly. "And personally, I think they got what they deserved. But professionally," she sighed. "The Henderson account is valuable, Emma, and they're skittish about controversy of any kind." My heart sank. "Are they pulling their account?" "Not yet," Linda assured me. "But they've asked for a different account manager just until the publicity dies down." It wasn't as bad as I'd feared, but it still stung. My work had always been separate from my personal life, a sanctuary of competence and respect I'd maintained even through the worst of my heartbreak. Now the fallout from my revenge was threatening that too. "I understand," I said, trying to keep the disappointment from my voice. "Who will you reassign to Henderson?" "Marcus, probably," Linda replied. "But Emma, this is temporary. A few weeks, maybe a month? Just until people forget about wedding toasts and move on to the next social media sensation." I nodded, grateful for her understanding but still unsettled. As I left her office, the weight of unintended consequences settled more heavily on my shoulders. James might lose his job. I'd been reassigned from my biggest client. Vanessa was estranged from her family. The ripples of my actions were spreading further than I'd anticipated, affecting more than just the two people who had betrayed me. For the first time since executing my plan, I felt a flicker of genuine regret, not for exposing the truth, but for the way I'd done it. The public nature of my revenge, which had seemed so righteously fitting in my planning, now seemed excessive, even to me. But what was done was done. I couldn't take back my words any more than James and Vanessa could take back their betrayal. All I could do now was weather the consequences and try to move forward with as much grace as possible. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and quiet evenings at home. I avoided social media entirely, unwilling to see if I was still a topic of discussion. The phone calls from unknown numbers gradually tapered off as public interest waned. Ashley kept me updated on the essential gossip. James had indeed lost his job at the architecture firm, though he'd quickly found a position at a smaller company. Vanessa had taken a leave of absence from her job and was reportedly staying with her sister in another state. I absorbed this information with a complex mix of emotions: satisfaction that they hadn't escaped unscathed, guilt about the extent of the fallout, and beneath it all, a growing sense that none of it really mattered anymore. Their lives would go on, changed but not destroyed. So would mine. By February, the storm had largely passed. Linda reassigned me to the Henderson account, which had never actually suffered from my temporary removal. My colleagues stopped giving me curious looks in the break room. My phone no longer rang with calls from strangers seeking gossip. Life settled into a new normal, different from the one I'd planned a year ago, but comfortable in its own way. I went on a few dates, nothing serious but pleasant enough to remind me that connection was still possible. I rekindled old friendships that had fallen by the wayside during my engagement. I even started looking at real estate listings, thinking about buying a place of my own instead of continuing to rent. Then, on a rainy Tuesday in late February, I received an email that threatened the fragile peace I'd built. From Allison Peters. Subject: Interview request for Modern Vengeance. Podcast: Dear Ms. Clark, I'm the producer of Modern Vengeance, a podcast that explores stories of revenge and justice in the digital age. Your wedding toast has become something of a legend in certain online communities, and we would love to feature your story in an upcoming episode. This would be an opportunity to tell your side of events in full, beyond the snippets that circulated on social media. We would also be reaching out to other parties involved for their perspective. Please let me know if you would be interested in speaking with us. I'm happy to provide more information about our show and process. Best regards, Allison Peters. I stared at the email for a long time, my stomach churning. The idea of rehashing everything for public consumption, of having James and Vanessa give their versions of events, of keeping this story alive when I was finally starting to move past it, it made me feel physically ill. Almost without thinking, I picked up my phone and called the one person who had been my consistent ally through all of this. Ashley, are you free for dinner tonight? I need some advice. We met at a small Italian restaurant near my office, the kind of cozy, unpretentious place where you could actually have a conversation without shouting over music or other diners. I showed Ashley the email on my phone as soon as we'd ordered. Wow, she said after reading it twice. A podcast, huh? That's different. What should I do? I asked, tearing a breadstick into tiny pieces rather than eating it. Part of me wants to tell them to go to hell, but another part thinks, maybe this is a chance to control the narrative one last time? Ashley considered this, taking a sip of her wine. What exactly would you want to say that you haven't already said? You made your point pretty thoroughly at the wedding. It was a fair question, and one I didn't immediately have an answer for. I guess I'd want people to understand that it wasn't just about revenge, I said slowly. That it was about truth, about consequences, about refusing to be written out of their story. And you think a podcast called Modern Vengeance is going to be interested in those nuances? Ashley raised a skeptical eyebrow. Put that way, it did seem naive. Probably not, I admitted. They probably want the juicy details, the drama. They want the revenge story. Exactly, Ashley nodded. Look, Em, you've spent the last 2 months trying to move forward. You're doing well. You're dating again. You're looking at buying a house. Do you really want to drag yourself back into all that mess for the entertainment of podcast listeners? When she put it like that, the answer was obvious. No, I said firmly. I don't. So there's your answer. She reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Let it go, Emma. Let them go. That night, I composed a brief, polite response to Allison Peters, declining her interview request. As I hit send, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd released the last thread tying me to my past with James and Vanessa. Their betrayal would always be part of my story, and my revenge would always be part of theirs. But neither needed to define us forever. The next morning, I woke to an email notification that made my heart skip. James Porter has sent you a connection request on LinkedIn. My finger hovered over the notification, hesitating between opening it and deleting it outright. Curiosity, my old weakness, won out. I tapped to view the request. There was a message attached. Emma, I hope this isn't unwelcome. I wanted to let you know that I've started at Green & Associates, a smaller firm but one that values integrity and transparency, lessons I'm still learning. I also wanted to thank you, oddly enough. The past few months have forced me to confront parts of myself I'd rather have ignored. It's been painful but necessary. I don't expect a response or forgiveness, just wanted you to know that despite everything, I wish you well. Psat. I stared at the message for a long time, unsure how to feel about it. There was no mention of Vanessa, no update on their relationship status. Just this strange, almost peaceful acknowledgement of his growth through adversity I had created. Should I respond? Ignore it? Delete it and block him? Each option seemed equally valid, equally problematic. In the end, I decided to simply ignore the connection request without responding to the message. I wasn't ready to have James in any part of my life, even the sanitized professional world of LinkedIn. But I also didn't feel the need to block him or react with anger. The message itself, humble, reflective, had diffused much of the lingering resentment I might have felt at this unexpected contact. Progress, I supposed, for both of us. March arrived with the first tentative signs of spring, crocuses pushing through the last patches of snow, days growing perceptibly longer, the sharp edge of winter softening into something more forgiving. I found myself looking forward in ways I hadn't for months, making plans that extended beyond just getting through the next day or week. I was sitting at my desk at work, reviewing a client proposal, when my phone lit up with a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Emma, it's Sophie. Vanessa's cousin. I hope it's okay that I'm texting you. I got your number from the old bridal party group chat." I frowned, wondering what Vanessa's cousin could possibly want from me. We'd never been close, barely more than acquaintances who'd smiled politely at each other during family gatherings. "Hi, Sophie. What can I do for you?" I responded cautiously. The reply came quickly. "I'm in town for a conference and wondered if you might be free for coffee tomorrow. There's something I'd like to talk to you about in person." Every instinct told me to decline. Whatever Sophie wanted to discuss, it almost certainly involved Vanessa, and I'd spent months carefully extracting myself from that part of my past. Opening that door again even slightly seemed unwise. But perhaps it was time to face whatever lingering pieces of that broken relationship remained. Perhaps hearing what Sophie had to say would help me close this chapter more completely. "Sure. How about riverfront coffee at 10 tomorrow?" I suggested, naming a cafe near my office where I could easily excuse myself if the conversation became uncomfortable. "Perfect. See you then." I spent the rest of the day distracted, wondering what Sophie wanted to discuss. Had Vanessa sent her as an emissary? Was she seeking some kind of reconciliation? Or was it something else entirely, something I couldn't anticipate? By the time I arrived at the cafe the next morning, my curiosity had evolved into mild anxiety. I spotted Sophie immediately, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups already in front of her. She looked much as I remembered, petite, with Vanessa's dark hair but softer features, dressed in the kind of expensive casual clothing that suggested careful attention to appearance without obvious effort. "Emma." She greeted me with a tentative smile, standing to offer an awkward half-hug. "Thank you for coming. I got you a latte. I remembered from the bridal shower that's what you usually drink." The reminder of that day, Vanessa beaming as I opened gifts for a wedding that would never happen, sent a small pang through me, but I accepted the drink with a polite smile. "Thanks. It's good to see you, Sophie." She nodded, waiting until I was seated before speaking again. "I'm sure you're wondering why I wanted to meet." "It did cross my mind," I admitted. She took a deep breath as if bracing herself. "It's about Vanessa. And James. They're not together anymore." The news hit me with unexpected force. Not pain or jealousy, but a startled sort of curiosity. "Since when?" "Since about 3 weeks after the wedding," Sophie said, watching my reaction carefully. It didn't last long once the excitement died down. 3 weeks. They'd barely made it a month as husband and wife before the relationship imploded. After everything, after destroying my trust, my future, my relationship, their great love had fizzled out in less time than it takes to break in a new pair of shoes. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or cry. Instead, I took a slow sip of my latte. "I see. And you're telling me this because—" Sophie fidgeted with her cup. "Because I thought you should know. Because—" She hesitated, then continued in a rush. "Because you were right, Emma. About everything. What they did to you was unforgivable, and the way they tried to romanticize it afterward was just gross." Her unexpected support caught me off guard. "I thought you were close with Vanessa," I said carefully. I am in some ways," Sophie acknowledged. "But I've always known who she really is. The things you said at the wedding? They weren't new information for me. I've seen Vanessa operate my whole life. I just never expected her to do something that terrible to you, of all people. You were always so good to her." The validation from someone in Vanessa's inner circle was oddly affecting. For months I'd carried the weight of my actions, wondering if I'd gone too far, if my revenge had been excessive. Hearing Sophie, who had every reason to take Vanessa's side, affirm the rightness of my actions lifted some of that burden. "Thank you for saying that," I said quietly. "It means more than you might think." Sophie nodded, seeming relieved by my response. "There's something else," she continued. Something I thought you should know about what happened after you left the wedding. I steeled myself, unsure if I wanted to hear whatever revelation was coming. Go on. James's parents pulled him aside while Vanessa was having her meltdown, Sophie explained. His father told him he was ashamed, not just of the cocaine thing, but of how James had treated you. He said something like, I raised you to be a man of integrity, not to steal another man's wife or another woman's husband. Then his mother, who never raises her voice, told him that if he and Vanessa stayed together, they wouldn't be welcome in their home. I blinked in surprise. James's parents had always been warm to me, but they were generally non-confrontational people who avoided direct conflict. The idea of them delivering such an ultimatum was shocking. That night at the hotel, Sophie continued, James and Vanessa had their first big fight. He blamed her for pushing for the big wedding that gave you the perfect stage. She blamed him for not convincing you to keep quiet. By morning, the cracks were already showing. 3 weeks later, he moved out of their apartment. The story of their rapid collapse should have brought me satisfaction. Instead, I felt a strange, hollow sort of vindication. Evidence that their relationship had been built on a foundation too weak to withstand the first real test. Not true love after all, but infatuation wrapped in the exciting, forbidden nature of their affair. Where is she now? I found myself asking, not sure why I cared. Back with her parents temporarily, Sophie replied. She's looking for a new job, a fresh start in Chicago. I think she finally realizes how badly she messed up everything here. I nodded, absorbing this information with surprising calm. And James? Still at the new firm, from what I hear. Keeping his head down, trying to rebuild his reputation. Sophie looked at me curiously. You don't seem as, triumphant as I expected. It was a perceptive observation. By all rights, I should have been gloating at their downfall, satisfied that my revenge had not only exposed them, but ultimately destroyed their relationship. Instead, I felt something closer to peace. A quiet acknowledgement that justice had been served, that balance had been restored to the universe. I'm past the point of needing to see them suffer, I explained. I just needed the truth to be known. What happened afterward? That's between them. Sophie studied me with newfound respect. You're a better person than I would be in your situation. I smiled slightly, thinking of the months of rage and pain that had led to my wedding toast. Don't give me too much credit. I had my moments of wanting to burn their world to the ground. Well, you kind of did, Sophie said with a small laugh, but in the most elegant way possible. We finished our coffee in a surprisingly comfortable conversation, catching up on mutual acquaintances and her work in pharmaceutical marketing. As we prepared to leave, Sophie hesitated, then asked the question I'd been waiting for. Would you ever consider talking to Vanessa again? She misses you. More than she misses James, if I'm being honest. I considered this seriously, trying to imagine a scenario where I could look at Vanessa without seeing her betrayal, where I could listen to her voice without hearing echoes of her lies. I don't think so, I said finally. Too much has happened. Sometimes the healthiest thing is to accept that a relationship has run its course, even one as long as ours was. Sophie nodded, looking disappointed but not surprised. I understand. For what it's worth, I think she does too. She just hasn't accepted it yet. We parted with a genuine hug and promises to grab coffee again if she was ever back in town, promises we both knew were polite fictions. Our connection had always been through Vanessa, and without her, there was little to sustain a friendship between us. As I walked back to my office, I felt lighter somehow, as if the last piece of a puzzle had fallen into place. James and Vanessa were over. Their great love story, the one that had justified all their deception, all their betrayal, had collapsed under the weight of reality. The narrative they'd constructed to absolve themselves had proven as false as I'd always believed it to be. But strangely, this knowledge brought me no particular joy. Their failure wasn't my victory. My victory had come months ago, when I'd reclaimed my dignity and exposed their lies. Everything since then, their breakup, their professional setbacks, their social embarrassment, was simply the natural consequence of choices they had made. That evening, I called Ashley to share what I'd learned from Sophie. Well, she said when I finished recounting the conversation. Can't say I'm surprised. People who cheat together rarely trust each other afterward. That's what's strange, I mused. I always thought hearing they'd broken up would feel like the final vindication. But I don't really feel anything about it. Not happiness, not satisfaction, nothing. That's because you've moved on, Ashley said simply. They don't matter to you anymore, Emma. That's what healing looks like. Her words resonated deeply. They didn't matter to me anymore. Not as people whose actions could hurt me, not as figures whose happiness could diminish mine. They were characters in a story I'd already finished reading. The last page turned, the book closed and returned to the shelf. I think you're right, I agreed. And it feels good. Really good. You know what this calls for? Ashley's voice took on the enthusiastic tone that usually preceded one of her grand ideas. A proper celebration. Not of their breakup, but of your freedom from all of it. Saturday night. Fancy drinks? Dancing. The works. I laughed, surprised by how appealing the idea sounded. You know what? Let's do it. Saturday night found us at an upscale rooftop bar, dressed in our best and toasting with expensive cocktails as the city lights sparkled around us. Ashley had invited a few other friends, my support system from the darkest days after the discovery, and the atmosphere was festive, celebratory in a way I hadn't experienced in over a year. To Emma, Ashley declared, raising her glass, who walked through fire and came out stronger on the other side. To Emma, the others echoed, clinking their glasses against mine. I smiled, touched by their support and genuine affection. Thank you all, I said, for everything. I wouldn't have made it through without you. As the night progressed, we migrated from the bar to the dance floor, moving to the music with the carefree abandon of people without shadows hanging over them. I felt lighter than I had in ages, unburdened by the weight of betrayal and the heavy responsibility of revenge. It was past midnight when I stepped outside onto the quiet section of the rooftop for some fresh air. The spring night was cool but not cold, the stars visible despite the city lights. I leaned against the railing, looking out at the skyline and reflecting on how much had changed in a year. Beautiful night, a voice said beside me. I turned to find a man I didn't recognize, tall, with kind eyes and a smile that seemed genuinely warm rather than predatory. He wasn't conventionally handsome, but there was something appealing about the intelligence in his expression, the ease of his posture. It is, I agreed cautiously. I'm Daniel, he said, offering his hand. I promise I'm not trying a cheesy pickup line. Well, not entirely. I just needed some air and saw you out here alone. Despite myself, I smiled, shaking his hand. Emma. And I appreciate the honesty about the partial pickup line. His laugh was warm and genuine. Transparency is important. Are you here with friends? I nodded, gesturing toward the door to the main bar. A girls' night. Celebrating new beginnings, I guess you could say? New beginnings are good, he said, leaning against the railing next to me but maintaining a respectful distance. I'm actually celebrating something similar myself. Just finished my doctoral dissertation after 4 years of work. Feels like I've been released from prison. Congratulations, I said, genuinely impressed. What field? Environmental engineering, he replied. Specifically, sustainable water purification systems for developing regions. Not exactly thrilling cocktail party conversation, I know. Actually, it sounds fascinating, I said, surprising myself with how much I meant it. I'd rather hear about water purification than cryptocurrency or fantasy football, which seem to be the standard options these days. He laughed again, and I found myself enjoying the sound. Well, in that case, I'd be happy to bore you with the details sometime. Maybe over coffee? A year ago, even 6 months ago, I would have declined automatically, still too raw from betrayal to consider opening myself to potential hurt again. But now, looking at this stranger with his kind eyes and genuine interest, I felt something I hadn't expected. Possibility. Not a fairy tale ending. Not a grand romance to erase the pain of the past. Just the simple human possibility of connection, of sharing coffee and conversation with someone new, with no guarantees but no ghosts either. I'd like that, I said, taking out my phone. Here, put in your number. As he entered his contact information, I glanced back through the doors at my friends, still dancing and laughing inside. Ashley caught my eye through the glass and raised an eyebrow in Daniel's direction, giving me a subtle thumbs up. I rolled my eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. There, Daniel said, handing back my phone. No pressure, but I really would enjoy that coffee. I'll text you, I promised, meaning it. After he rejoined his friends inside, I stayed on the rooftop a moment longer, breathing in the night air and feeling a curious sense of completion. The chapter with James and Vanessa was truly closed now. The revenge that had consumed so much of my energy and focus was behind me. Ahead lay possibilities I couldn't yet imagine. A new home, perhaps, new friendships, new challenges, maybe even new love. I thought of my wedding toast, of the cold satisfaction I'd felt watching James and Vanessa's faces as I exposed their secrets. It had felt like power then, like control wrested back from those who had taken it from me. But the real power, I realized now, had come afterward. In rebuilding, in healing, in choosing to move forward rather than remain trapped in the cycle of hurt and retribution. As I turned to rejoin my friends inside, I felt a sense of gratitude so profound it brought tears to my eyes, not for what had happened to me, but for what I had made of it. For the strength I'd found in myself, for the true friends who had stood by me, for the wisdom I'd gained through pain. The best revenge, it turned out, wasn't public humiliation or calculated exposure. It wasn't even watching their relationship crumble from the poisonous seeds of betrayal. The best revenge was simply this: living well, on my own terms, free from the weight of their actions at last. I texted Daniel the next morning, suggesting coffee at Riverfront the following weekend. His reply came quickly, enthusiastic but not overeager. We set a date and time, and I found myself looking forward to it with a lightness I hadn't felt in romantic prospects for a long time. During the week that followed, I threw myself into work with renewed energy, impressing even Linda with my creativity on a challenging new campaign. I toured 3 properties with a real estate agent, imagining how I might make each space my own. I had dinner with my parents, who remarked more than once on how much more like myself I seemed. By the time Saturday arrived, I was approaching my coffee date with Daniel with curiosity rather than anxiety. We met at the cafe as planned, his smile warm and genuine as he spotted me entering. "I wasn't sure if you'd actually text," he admitted as we settled at a corner table with our drinks. "I wasn't sure either," I replied honestly. "It's been a complicated year." Something in my tone must have conveyed more than my words, because he nodded with unexpected understanding. "I've had a few of those myself. Sometimes they're the years that change us most, though." We talked for hours, moving easily from topic to topic. His research, my work in marketing, books we'd read recently, places we hoped to travel someday. He was intelligent without being condescending, passionate without being intense, funny without being mean. I found myself laughing more than I had in ages, genuinely engaged in learning about this new person. When he asked about my past relationships, I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. In the end, I opted for honesty without overwhelming detail. I was engaged. I told him. It ended badly when I discovered he was having an affair with my best friend. They actually got married on New Year's Eve and divorced 3 weeks later. Daniel winced. Wow. I'm sorry you went through that. It was horrible, I acknowledged. But I survived it. More than survived, really. I learned a lot about myself, about what I value, about the kind of person I want to be. And what kind of person is that? He asked, genuinely curious. I considered the question carefully. Someone who values honesty above almost everything else. Someone who doesn't compromise her dignity for anyone. Someone who believes in justice but also in moving forward. He nodded slowly. Those all sound like qualities worth having. We parted with plans to meet again the following weekend, dinner this time at a small bistro he recommended. As I walked home, I felt a cautious optimism blooming inside me. Not because I thought Daniel was the one, or because I expected our connection to develop into something serious, but because for the first time in a very long time, I was open to the possibility. I was looking forward rather than back. That evening, I opened my laptop and created a new document. At the top, I typed, "Things I know about Emma Clark." And then I began to list everything I had learned about myself over the past year. I am stronger than I knew. I am capable of great anger and greater resilience. I value truth above comfort. I am not defined by what was done to me, but by how I responded. I can plan and execute a flawless revenge, but I can also choose to walk away. I understand now that some betrayals can never be repaired, and that's okay. I know that moving forward doesn't mean forgetting, just refusing to be imprisoned by memory. I saved the document, not as a weapon or a reminder of pain, but as a testament to growth, a record of the woman I had become through fire and fury and finally, peace. The past year had brought me the deepest pain I'd ever experienced, but also the most profound transformation. I had loved and lost, trusted and been betrayed, planned revenge and executed it flawlessly. But most importantly, I had survived it all and emerged not just intact, but stronger, wiser, and ultimately freer. My best friend had stolen my fiancé, and in the process had inadvertently given me the gift of discovering my true self. The self that could stand alone, that could face betrayal and not be broken by it, that could seek justice without losing her soul to vengeance. In the end, that was the most unexpected twist in our complicated story. That their betrayal, meant to destroy me, had instead forced me to rebuild myself into someone far stronger than I'd ever been before. As spring bloomed fully around me, bringing new life and new beginnings, I embraced the future with open eyes and an open heart, scarred certainly, but beautifully, powerfully whole.